This feels too close up. Do y'all feel like you're in my bubble? Because I feel like you're in my bubble. Now you're too far away. Baby, come back. Okay, this feels right. This kind of feels like, you know, when a teacher at a school dance would tell you, leave enough room for God? Hey, what's up? Hello, it's Katie Colson here. Welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to talk about the best books I read in 2022. Now, here's the thing. I have read this year what I would consider to be an embarrassing amount of books. Is there such a thing as too many books? I found out. The answer is yes, okay? I read too many. So picking a favorites list is rather difficult, but what I did is almost all of the ones that I picked, I have read more than once this year because my second guessing brain is like, oh my God, what if it was terrible and you were just in the heat of the moment? Because cut to 2021, when I seriously, with all seriousness, put All of Us Villains on an honorable mention for my best books of 2021, gave it 5 stars. And then this year I reread it and gave it 2 stars. And I was like, was I possessed? Like, what was I doing? And that is forever living on the internet. People are going to see that and think I loved this book. We cannot make that mistake again. I tried my absolute best, and I've rewritten this list so many times, like so many times. I tried so hard to put them in like a vague order of like favorite to most favorite of the year, but I do have 12 to talk about, and number 12, the only reason it's so far down is because I know you're all literally sick of hearing me talk about this. You're sick of it. You're sick of it, and it's the only manga we're going to talk about. Spy Family by Tatsuya Endo. Do you just love to gatekeep yourself from joy? Because that's the only reason you wouldn't read this book. Like this manga, do you love yourself? You surely can't if you haven't read this series. Like, read the series, watch the anime. It's literally a ray of sunshine. Okay, now on to number 11. I have The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. So this is a book I read twice this year, and it's on number 11 because I definitely understand people not liking this book, but my jaw was on the floor. My jaw was on the floor. And the first time I read it, I was like, I don't know how I felt about that twist. I don't know. When I read it the second time, my eyes were open. I was like, wow, this is so well done. This is sensitive. This is in depth. But this, in as best as I can summarize it, this is a thriller, mystery thriller, okay? And we're following a couple POVs. We're following Ted, his cat, a young girl, and Dee. And Dee's sister, many years ago, was kidnapped, okay? And she, in an attempt to find her sister, moves in next door to Ted, who she is sure had something to do with the crime, okay? Now, he's used to living like where there's no neighbors or anything, and because of this situation upsetting his routine and his comfortable lifestyle where he can do whatever he wants and nobody's really going to see him, because of that upset in his routine, Ted's life begins to like spin out of control. And I cannot give you any quotes from this book. I can't talk about any plot points because everything is a spoiler, and I think this book is unsettling. It is unsettling. It is very jarring. And okay, the leggings, we're not going to talk about it, but the changing room, reading it the second time. Okay, listen, I'm not telling you that you're gonna love it, but I'm telling you it's 5 stars. Number 10 is one that I haven't reread, but am very, very desperate to do so because it got snubbed in the Goodreads Choice Awards. Absolutely snubbed. The Romantic Agenda by Claire Kann. This is so good. This is about an asexual main character, and it's a romance novel because she's not a romantic, and that's something I've never before seen or heard of in a romance novel, and much to say like just a regular novel in general, because I'm asexual. I am also aromantic, but reading about somebody who wasn't aromantic and is asexual was very interesting and eye-opening for me, and the way that she's perceived, not only by romantic interests, but by just people in everyday life and her family and friends, was very interesting. So we're following Joy, and she is a 30-year-old Black social media influencer. And she's been in love with her best friend Malcolm for ages, but has never been brave enough to actually tell him. And right when she thinks that she's headed in the right direction with Malcolm, he tells her that he has a serious girlfriend and that she might be the one. And Joy is like, what? Excuse me? And Malcolm's like, oh, cool, I want you to meet her. Can you come with us on this weekend getaway with me, Summer, you? Oh, yeah, and by the way, Summer's best friend, Fox. Okay, but then when she goes, Fox realizes that Joy is in love with Malcolm and has this longing for him, and he's like, I'm gonna help you out. Let's pretend to fall for each other, and then maybe that'll make Malcolm jealous enough to admit that he has feelings for you. But it's romance. We all know that the fake little flirty moments that Joy and Fox are having together may not be so fake, and maybe Joy is starting to realize that Malcolm is her platonic soulmate and not her romantic soulmate. Which, listen, I'm going to tell you, I have a couple quotes written from each of the books, okay? Unless they're like insanely spoilery. But one of the quotes from this book that got me, oh my God, this got me so bad. Okay. This says, Caroline, which is one of Malcolm's ex-girlfriends, Caroline felt that Malcolm put Joy before their relationship, and she was always an afterthought. Truth be told, it's always been like that between Malcolm, his partners, and Joy. It starts out fine, but before long, they hate her for no other reason than Malcolm loves her more than they think she deserves. Goddamn. Joy isn't family. She isn't some ex he's never gotten over. She's just a friend. Just. A just who shouldn't be important. A just who should be discarded. A just who should disappear. Joy fought for Malcolm, refusing to drift away, standing by him until he realized she would always be there, until he believed it. And so far, she had succeeded where they had all failed. The greatest love of his life was, as they put it, just a friend. I'm gonna cry. Number 9 is shocking because it's a YA horror, and I don't read YA anymore, except for notable exceptions. One of which being Tiffany D. Jackson, who is truly the definition of built different. Like, her YA, 5 stars. Every freaking time, 5 stars. The Weight of Blood. This is a Carrie retelling, but it's in 2014, set in this small town, Georgia, where they still have segregated proms. Now, here's the thing. All of Tiffany D. Jackson's books have a baseline that is based on a real news headline. And this is based on that. If you're like, 2014, segregated proms, there's no way. Really? Because Google it. In 2014, Wilcox, I think it was Wilcox County, Georgia, actually had their first racially integrated prom, and it was all over the news because they were like, y'all have segregated proms? And the town was like, what? Oh my God, this is such an eye-opening experience. We're gonna have a integrated prom and it's gonna be so amazing. And oh my God, don't all the Black students love it? And we're like forcing them to like act like it was a great idea and that like the white kids were the ones that came up with it, even though it wasn't. Anyway, that is where you begin. This story is with our main character, Maddie Washington. It's 2014, and they're gonna have a segregated prom, okay? And her fanatical white father tells her that she absolutely can never let anybody know that she's mixed race because her mother was Black and her dad is white. So he hot combs her hair within an inch of her life, refuses to ever let her walk or be in the sunlight lest her skin darken the slightest amount. And he's like, you have to tell everybody that you're 100% white. That's the worst thing you could ever do, is let them know that you have any Black heritage at all. Maddie goes to PE and it starts to rain and her hair kinks up. Now, maybe a normal group of people would be like, the girl just has curly hair. But no, this racist town starts immediately aggressively assaulting her and harassing her, saying that she's been blackfishing them and that like, oh, how dare you pretend to be white? Like you were tricking us this whole time or whatever. And a girl comes to school in blackface. She goes to school in blackface. And I'm like, I'm so glad that this exists and that it's on YA shelves in bookstores where kids can pick this up and maybe recognize the, oh, it's tradition or you know, it's just like the way we do things that maybe their parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, whatever, things that people in their lives say, and they can recognize it as not being okay and how messed up it actually is, and that generationally they can change. And I think that is freaking stunning. Now, if you don't know what Carrie's about, where have you been? Where have you been? I love Carrie. I love the original story, and I think you probably have to enjoy this. Now, here's the thing. This follows situationally exactly what happens in Carrie, basically. So I guess you'd be spoiled on that if you've read Carrie, but I did not find that deterring for my enjoyment at all. I actually preferred it because I was so looking forward to that ending. So looking forward to it, okay? Now, I'm not gonna get into what happens, but there's telekinesis. There's telekinesis, you know, that if that's the fun draw that pulls you in, great. But let me tell you a quote from Miss Tiffany D. Jackson. So they're having a prom committee where one of the white students doesn't want to do a racially integrated prom because he says that prom's not supposed to be about all that. Prom is about tradition. Our parents, even our grandparents, they all had segregated proms. You don't understand because you're not from here. The teacher says, well, your tradition is rooted in segregation, the very foundation of the systemic racism that has oppressed people of color in this country for years. And he says some more stupid shit. And then he says, you're just trying to push some liberal agenda on us, crying foul whenever something doesn't go your way. Well, just because I don't want to combine proms doesn't make me a racist. And she says, calm as day. I didn't say you were. I said the traditions that you're trying to uphold are rooted in racism. Like, this is what I mean when I say Tiffany G. Jackson. She is built different. Number 9 is going to be books 1 and 2 from the Themis Files by Sylvain Neuvel. First 2 books, 5 stars. Haven't read the third one because I've heard that it sucks. So basically you are following where at the beginning of the story, there is a young girl in South Dakota who's riding her bike and she falls into this sudden gaping hole. And when she wakes up, it's in the middle of a giant metal hand. And this gets unearthed, but scientists and everything are like, they don't know what it is. They don't know how to unlock it. And then 17 years later, the same girl, Rose, is a highly trained physicist, and she's leading a team trying to crack the code of this hand. Okay. Now, thing is, there is other metal body parts that are popping up, just being unearthed around the world. The US is on a rush to collect all of these parts so that they can be the first person to weaponize like a robot slash alien. The way the story is told is that it's through interview format, and the interviewer, who is my favorite character, he's being sent out by some big like corporation of immense power and wealth that wants to dictate the way that this is going to be weaponized and how it's going to be used and where the information is going. So he is going around and interviewing all of the potential pieces of this puzzle, and it's so entertaining. It's so entertaining. Oh my God, I freaking love it. So good. And one of my favorite quotes from this that really made me think so much is something that the interviewer says. And it's because they're worried that if this gets out, like whenever they think that it might be a giant robot or it might be an alien, they're like, oh my God, we can't let people know about this. They're going to freak out. It's going to cause World War III. Oh my God. And the interviewer is like, no. And he says, you train your soldiers to kill us using video games. They blow enough people up on their computer and it becomes easier for them to kill with a real weapon. Why do you think your government funds so many war and terrorism movies? Hollywood does your dirty work for you. Had 9/11 happened 20 years earlier, the country would have been in chaos. But people have seen enough bad things on their television screen to prepare them for just about anything. We do not really need to talk about government conspiracies. And I was like, what? Like, that blew my mind. 7 is an entire series, and it is the Veronica Speedwell series by Deanna Raybourn, the first of which being A Curious Beginning. I do believe that the 4th book, A Dangerous Collaboration, is my favorite, but we're going to show the first one just so you know what the cover looks like in case you want to start reading them, which you totally should. It's like a cozy historical mystery that's hilarious, and I actually love the romance so much. So we're following Veronica Speedwell, who is a lepidopterist, or a butterfly hunter, okay? And she is come upon very suddenly by a baron who says, you're in grave danger, you've got to get out of this town. Well, Veronica has been trying to ditch this town and go on like scientific adventures for a long time. So she doesn't really believe him that she's in danger, but she pretends to get a free ticket out of town, basically. So the baron takes her to Stoker, who is a certified hottie. Obsessed. Stoker is a natural historian, okay? And he's kind of grumpy. And the Baron is like, you need to watch out and watch over Veronica until I can get her safe passage out of town. And Stoker's like, fine, I'll do you a favor. Okay, got it. And is like, you can stay here for like a couple hours. Well, the Baron gets swiftly moided. And now Stoker is solely in charge of keeping Veronica safe and trying to figure out why people are trying to kill her and who killed his best friend. And now they're just on this whole slew of crimes. They're just solving crimes together. And it's so much fun. I love these characters. This is definitely a character book. If you don't fall in love with the 2 characters, don't bother. Don't bother, because it's really based on Veronica and Stoker, and I'm literally obsessed. And it's so funny. Okay, so a couple quotes from Veronica that I love that had me literally laughing out loud is, I am quite determined to be my mistress of my own fate, Miss Clutterthorpe, but I do sympathize with how strange it must sound to you. It's not your fault that you are entirely devoid of imagination. I blame your education. Mic drop. Okay? And then at another point, she says, I have faith that men can be as reasonable and logical as women if they but try. Like, are you kidding? I love them. Number 6 is Confessions by Kane Minato, and this is one that I have read twice. I also read Curious Beginning twice this year. Forgot to say that. But I read this one twice, and I read this because I was actually on Kayla's Literally Dead book club with Gavin for a live show for this, and I absolutely loved it so much. So if you want to hear more in-depth thoughts or spoilery thoughts, I will link that down below because I cannot read a single sentence of this book. It's so short. It's so many spoilers. Like every single line of this, I do not want to take away the experience that you will have reading it. But this is going to be a Korean horror or horror thriller, I guess. But this is about Yuki Moriguchi, and she is a middle school teacher and a single mother. Now, we start out at the very beginning with her sitting her class down for what she says is the last time because her 4-year-old daughter was recently murdered, and she announces to the class that she knows without a shadow of a doubt that 2 of them are responsible and that she's going to set out on this maniacal plot for revenge. And what she does and the ripple effect of the cause and causation and the guilt and like what guilt will lead you to do, and like that guilt, it can be a way bigger motivator, or shame can be a way bigger motivator than anything, and fear of being found out can cause more damage than actually being found out. And the shit literally every time a chapter in this ends, it's like the biggest plot twist I've ever seen in my freaking life. It is crazy. Like, okay, we're not gonna get into it, but the milk. What are you talking about? I don't know what Kane Minato is on, but she needs to share it with the class because American authors, they do not do it like this. Number 5, of course, is Slew Foot by Brahm. I've read this twice this year and I will read it again. I'll probably read it every year because the audiobook is absolutely stunning and it's so rereadable and just so fun and like whimsical in a way. Look at that. God, it's gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. So this is about Abatha, our main character, who lives in a Puritan colony with her husband, but her husband's brother, who was an asshat. Wallace is basically trying to sell their farm out from under their feet. So Abatha and her husband are trying to raise enough crops to basically make enough money to pay for the farm by themselves. But then Abatha's husband mysteriously dies, and she is trying to basically keep as much freedom as a puritanical society rooted in religion will give her when she doesn't have a husband. Now, enter Samson, or Slew Foot. Slew Foot / Samson, okay? And he is this really powerful deity that doesn't remember who he is, doesn't remember where he came from or what he can do. And Abatha is like, I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna help you figure out your history, figure out what you're capable of, who you are. And in return, Samson is basically putting like magical steroids in her crops to make them grow faster. But then the town is like, she's a woman? She is a woman? How could she possibly be making money? She's a woman. So they basically are like, you're a witch and we're gonna burn you at the stake. And Samson's like, she's like kind of my friend. And it's like their relationship is so funny and so much fun. Thus sparks a really amazing quote, and it's in my reading journal. And it says, a hard grimace set on Abatha's face. If it is a witch they want, she hissed, then a witch they shall have. And then another thing I loved about this book is another quote I have, which is talking about perception and religion and how religion can be weaponized. And it says, Abatha could see that these people truly believed that they were doing God's work here this day. And there was something about these people that horrified Abatha even worse than those whose faces were lined with cruelty, as at least cruelty was a thing that could be pointed out. But this belief, this absolute conviction that this evil thing they were doing was good, was God's work, how she wondered, how could such a dark conviction ever be overcome? And I was like, wow, you're right. Number 4 is also going to be an entire series, and that's the Thursday Murder Club series by Richard Osman. But my favorite is the second book, which is The Man Who Died Twice. Now, this is one where, yeah, technically I only gave one of the books 5 stars, but I love this series. I love these characters. This is a character-driven story, and it's so good. And you're basically following in this sleepy, peaceful retirement village. You're following 4 unlikely friends who every Thursday they get together in the puzzle room to try and solve unsolved murders. So we have such an interesting group of characters. You have Joyce, who used to be a nurse. All of them are 80s, by the way, in their 80s. Okay, so we have Joyce, who was a nurse, who is like the type 2, kind, empathetic friend. And then you have Ron, the hard-headed friend who was like an ex-rioter. And then you have Ibrahim, who is the type 5. Oh, Ron's a type 8, by the way. But you have Ibrahim is a type 5 who was a psychiatrist and really well known as a psychiatrist for a long time. And then you have Elizabeth, who's a type 3. And she doesn't ever tell you what she used to do, but it's something like MI6 related is what I'm gathering. Okay. Now it's so funny. This series, if you love heartwarming friendship and British humor, the humor in this is absolutely hysterical. It's so much fun. I love the relation between them. Like it's heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time because the love they have for each other is just so beautiful. And one of my favorite moments, I love this so much. And it's where Joyce and Elizabeth stumble upon a dead body. Okay. Just randomly stumble upon a dead body. Well, Elizabeth does, and she calls Joyce. And the next day, they're telling Ron and Ibrahim about it, and Ron is so mad that she didn't call him because he wanted to see the dead body, okay? So he says, "Here's my promise to you," he begins, "with Joyce as my witness, and it's not a promise friends should have to make. If I ever find somebody shot, I will call you. I will call you because you're my mate, and that's what mates do. 2 in the morning, I don't care. I find a corpse, I pick up the phone. Elizabeth, there's a corpse on the landing, on the Bowles lawn, don't matter where. Slip on a pair of shoes and come take a look. I am absolutely fuming." Like, if that's not your kind of humor, you might not enjoy these books, but I fucking love them. Not only does it win Best Cover of the Year, but it's also my top 3 book of the year, which is my Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. Now, this is about Vanessa in 2000 when she's 15 and she becomes entangled in a relationship with her English professor who's 42 years old, Jacob Strain. We're also following the timeline of 2017 when Vanessa is having to grapple with a wave of allegations that are being brought against Strain. And there is a girl who reaches out to Vanessa who has accused Jacob Strain of sexual abuse when she was in school and reaches out to Vanessa to ask for her testimony for her support. And Vanessa is really struggling with whether or not she wants to remain silent so that she can keep the belief in her head that her teenage self willingly participated in this relationship, or if she's willing to redefine herself and her past as a victim of sexual and emotional abuse and grooming. So this is really, really well done. And you have this alternating between like memory and reality and past and trauma, and it juxtaposes it in such a way where you're really trying to see whether or not it is the trauma and reality versus the naivety and inexperience and ignorance and excitement of a teenage girl who is discovering herself, discovering her body and her power. And I really, really adore the internal struggle that Vanessa has in this book because it's realistic. It's so realistic. And there's so many people out there that stuff like this happens to, and they do not want to be seen as a victim. And they have to compartmentalize to save themselves mentally. And my favorite quote from this, God, it gets me every time. This makes me so emotional. Okay. This is Vanessa trying to explain why she doesn't want to testify. And she says, "I can't lose the thing I've held on to for so long, you know? I just really need it to be a love story, you know? I really, really need it to be that. Because if it isn't a love story, then what was it? It's my life. This has been my whole life." And like, I'm only going to suggest it if you can handle it, but it is stunningly written. I have to reread this book. I have to reread it. When I tell you that I read it in January of 2022 and I haven't stopped thinking about it and I talk about it literally all the time, Tinders the Flesh by Agustina Bastarrica. This is a translated work and she's never had any of her other work translated into English, but apparently 2023 is the year and we're getting another book. I'm so excited. Okay, this is a horror. And again, this is weird and it's gross, So don't act like I didn't tell you that. Okay? Don't pick this book up and throw up in your mouth and be like, Katie's a sicko. Yeah, I already said that. I already said I was. Okay, but I gave it 5 stars and it's absolutely stunning. So this is about cannibalism. Okay, if you don't want to read about cannibalism, you don't want to read this book. I'm telling you right now, you don't want to read it. But it's 5 stars and I'm obsessed. Okay, so this is supposed to be about where the government puts out this statement saying that a virus has infected all animals and their meat is now poisonous to humans. And then pretty swiftly after that, the government does a transition where they legalize cannibalism. That's suspicious. That's weird. Okay, well, we're following Marcos, who works at a butchery, basically, and it used to be for pigs, but they transitioned it for special meat, which is human beings. Okay, well, Marcos's wife left him recently because their newborn son had very suddenly died, and she's broken up about it. She leaves, and he is kind of stuck in this state of non-motion. Okay, and one day by his boss, he is gifted a specimen of the highest caliber, which is a woman. Okay. And you're not allowed to have any personal contact with the special meat or the heads, and it's punishable by death. But he basically keeps her chained up in his house and little by little starts treating her more like a human being. And he becomes tortured by the changes that have happened in the world and what the world is like now. Okay. Compared to what it was like when he was growing up. And here's the thing. The government conspiracy in this book. The government conspiracy. I love this because this is actually what would happen. The way that it goes about talking about it, and it's a short book. Like, she doesn't flesh things out in like a long-winded way. It'll just be like one sentence that makes you think for an hour. And in my opinion, that is well thought out. That is in depth, okay? And I love when a short horror can do that. So the conspiracy, one of the quotes is just literally saying exactly what I want to say. And it's, don't be an idiot. Can't you see they're controlling us? If we eat each other, they control overpopulation, poverty, crime. Do you want me to keep going? I mean, it's obvious. And I was like, yeah, it's obvious, okay? And then there's at one point where the main character, Marcos, his sister completely believes in all this. Completely believes in it, okay? And it says, she says, here everyone uses an umbrella when they go out. It's only logical because she's afraid that bird poo is going to poison her. I mean, I guess it hasn't been proven wrong. And he says, have you ever stopped to think that maybe the umbrella industry saw an opportunity and the government got in on it? And she's like, you always think there's some conspiracy when there isn't. And I'm like, oh my God, no. I'm literally like sitting over there with like the red tape, like, this is a conspiracy. Oh my God. Listen, again, I'm telling you, it's about cannibalism. I'm not saying you're going to like it. I'm telling you, I loved it. Are you ready? Are you ready? My best book of 2022, hands down, absolute success. If you haven't read this book, what are you doing? Notes on an Execution by Dania Kafka. I'm actually currently reading it again for the 3rd time this year, and it's blowing my mind again because this is like the most well-written book I've ever read in my freaking life. It's stunning, eloquent, beautiful, lyrical, amazing. I'm obsessed. So in this book, you might think it's a mystery thriller. It's not. It is not. It is not. It is fiction. Okay. So this is about Ansel Packer, who is a serial killer, and he's on death row. But you're following his story through the point of view of the women who have been affected by his life and by his crimes. So you start out where Ansel has 12 hours left to live, and while you're ticking down the hours until his execution, you are following his life story and how people have been affected by him from his mother, Lavender's point of view, from before she had him. Afterward, you're also following from the point of view of Hazel, his wife's twin sister, and Safi, who is a homicide detective who is attempting to catch him for her own personal vendetta. This is unraveling the American narrative of a serial killer, like true crime story, and the cultural obsession with crime stories, especially with women. And we're also trying to follow like a really questioning debate on the justice system and whether or not the death penalty is justice and whether or not it's right and how much money the government spends on it. And we're also following the false promise of looking for meaning in the psyche of violent men, because that's so interesting. Like, whenever you want to watch, like I do this, when I want to watch serial killer documentaries or serial killer podcasts, and I'm like, why did they do it? What made them like this? Whatever, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you know what? Just like a lot of men are violent. Just because some actually do it doesn't make them more interesting. Danica Kafka does not try to put shit down your throat. She gives you a bunch of different perspectives, and all of the women in this book have a different perspective on the death penalty, have a different perspective on Ansel, have a different history with him, and see things differently, and you choose what you want to believe. And the talk of the death penalty in this book is so well done and well executed. I'm literally obsessed, and literally every single part of this book I could read out loud, but I'm just gonna read just a little something. Okay, so this is when Anselm goes to a hospital because he realizes that he can't stop himself from doing what he's doing, and he wants somebody else to help him. And after one of these murders, it says, "You shouldn't have done it. You were sick and wrong. Most devastatingly, you were unchanged. You can do the vilest thing. It's not so hard to be bad. Evil isn't something you can pinpoint or hold, cradle, or banish. Evil hides, sly and invisible in the corners of everything else. It did not even feel good anymore. And if it did not feel good, then you have no idea why you killed them. Please," you whispered. "Please," you said. "I don't want to be like this." And I'm like, oh my God. It's so stunningly written. And then another thing where I literally was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, is she a poet? I'm so confused. Is that there's a girl, one of the victims, and instead of it just being like, oh my God, this is like how she was murdered, blah, 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 Danica Kafka is a freaking genius and has it from her point of view. If she could talk to you as the reader, what she would want to say instead of that. And there's a bunch of them. This is only one of them, but this one just got me so bad, is it says, "The tragedy is that she is dead, but the tragedy is also that she belongs to him, the bad man who did the bad thing. From wherever Izzy is now, she wishes she could say, before all this, my shoulders burned scarlet. I peeled off the flakes, flicked them into the sink. There were things I felt before the fear. I ate an orange in the sun. Let me tell you how it tasted." Oh my God, like, is that not stunning? Okay, that is gonna wrap it up for all of my best books of 2022. Have you read any of these? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there something where you're like, Katie, what are you talking about? This is the best book of the year? Please leave that in the comments down below. And if you're not sure what to comment, then leave the blue heart, because I'm realizing that a lot of these have a blue theme or even purple adjacent. So leave the blue heart if you've gotten this far into the video. I would love that. If you want to follow me on Goodreads or Patreon or Instagram or anything, there are going to be a myriad of links down below to help support this channel in many different ways. I want to thank you to everyone who has subscribed, everyone who continues to watch my channel, everyone who subscribes to my Patreon. I truly appreciate it so much, and you guys make my life possible. The life I'm living right now is possible because of you, and I appreciate you so much. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you're having an amazing day, evening, night, dusk, dawn, whatever it is you're having, in whatever part of the world you are currently having it in. And I will see you in a video coming very soon. Bye.